All eyes are understandably on Israel right now. It's easy to give all our attention there, and many people in the world would like us to focus solely on that situation while they perform their sleight of hand and pull the strings in other places. And while we've moved away from our weekly news segment on this channel to focus on the more practical side of prepping, and we're going to continue to do so, I feel this might be the time to take a look at what's happening around the world as multiple issues are playing out at the moment, many of which I have been surprised haven't really been covered in the mainstream media, that show some bigger issues brewing. As things are continuing to develop at a rapid pace, we need to see how these multiple issues are really all linked together in many ways, and to zoom out for a moment to see the bigger picture to avoid being sucked into this one headline dominating event with Israel and miss the other very real emerging threats. Now, I do these videos to try and keep you up to speed on these events to help you to determine the direction that you want to take in your preps. I'll also use this video to bring back our giveaways and announce the winner of our last giveaway, which we'll announce a little later in the video. Now, if you're not paying attention to the many things happening worldwide, you may miss the bigger picture. Who is pulling the strings of these global events? Let's talk about it. Now, before we do jump into this video and go over these main points, I do want to bring up some news a few subscribers alerted me to right before I started filming this video. It's a little after 6 p.m. on Thursday, October the 12th, and Hamas has officially called for a global day of jihad on Friday the 13th, which is a day I'll release this video. Now, some police departments in the United States, and probably I'm assuming other parts of the world, are ramping up their patrols and staff, so I would encourage you to definitely keep your head on a swivel. All right, let's jump in. Who's behind the Gaza attackers? Tech platforms, they face a significant challenge in containing misinformation about the Palestinian-Israeli hostilities after easing content moderation policies. Now, videos are being released and many are debunked or cleverly edited to portray a truth that's just not real. It's really difficult to believe anything you see these days. This wave of misinformation and sometimes disinformation following the recent conflict has been unprecedented in terms of scale and speed, highlighting the diminished capacity of platforms like the Meta-owned Facebook and Twitter, now known as X, to really combat false information. And with any event beyond those seeking to profit through social media and streaming platforms, state-sponsored groups are actively spreading misinformation and purposely stoking division. And I'll explain this a little more in depth later in the video. But I always try to look for the man behind the curtain because motivations and reasons for actions, they're speculative, and often even the people carrying out the atrocities are being manipulated at a much higher level. Now, in this case, Iran's role cannot be overlooked. U.S. officials are investigating whether Hamas militants involved in the recent attack on Israel received advanced training from Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and if explosives were placed during recent Palestinian protests as cover to breach the Israeli barrier. Now, these investigations, however, are more of a formality because we've known for years that Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps provides both training and material support to Hamas. The attack, more sophisticated than past Hamas operations, even allegedly involving paragliders, highlights Iran's decades-long support for the group through funding, weapons, and training. Now, this attack was not a ragtag group of disorganized rabble who just had enough. It was planned, it was trained for, and implemented to create maximum chaos, captives, and carnage. An operation at this level really takes weeks of planning and training. Add to that the fact that in the early morning of the attack, Hamas fired a rocket barrage of at least 3,000 missiles into Israel. Now, these missiles were built and shipped in from somewhere, and it wasn't the Gaza Strip. In tandem with other Palestinian militant groups, Hamas forces crossed the border between the Gaza Strip and Israel. And there's little doubt that Iran is complicit in the attack. But why, and why now? The answer, I believe, is simple. Saudi Arabia was negotiating the details of a security pact and a nuclear program with the United States in exchange for recognition of the Jewish state. Now, the aim is to push the Israelis into reprisals that make it impossible for the Saudis to go ahead with normalizing relations. Recognizing Israel as a Jewish state is a line too far for many Islamic countries. Anytime something like that is suggested or in the works, you're going to see terrorist attacks, training, and Iran's hand in it. Israel will try to wipe out Hamas and the Gaza Strip in the coming weeks, and more stories of horrific brutality will emerge. Iran will also join Russia in trying to open another front in Syria to distract Israel and the world's attention. Don't forget Syria. Syria, Israel's unfriendly neighbor to the north is still engaged in its own civil war. Israeli forces have reportedly launched missile strikes on Syria's Damascus and Aleppo airports, causing damage to runways and diverting flights. The attacks, which Israel has not commented on, are part of a broader regional context involving Iran's support for Hezbollah. Now, Iran's foreign minister plans to visit Syria and rally regional support for Hamas amid ongoing regional tensions. Even though the leaders of Iran and Syria claim to want and call for peace, the Iranian president urged Islamic and Arab countries to unite to support the Palestinian cause. Now, this comes in the context of Iran's increasing influence in Syria and recent diplomatic discussions involving a phone call between the Islamic president and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to address a Palestinian and Israeli conflict. Amid the ongoing conflict in Syria, it's essential to consider the provocative actions of Russian forces, who often engage in aggressive flybys of U.S. troops stationed in the region, where approximately 900 U.S. forces are embedded. As of January 2023, Russian forces remain on the ground in Syria, primarily in the northwest, providing training and support for operations against rebel groups. Now, adding complexity to the situation is the presence of the Wagner Group, a private military company with ties to the Russian state, which has been operating in Syria since late 2015 and has been reported to be as active as recent as 2021. Now, this dynamic raises concerns about the potential for Russia to open a new front in its ongoing conflict in Syria, where U.S. forces are actively engaged, supporting remnants of the Islamic State group and the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces. So we have Israel attacking spots in Syria to counter Iran and Syria's influence. We have Syria supported by Russia and conducting aggressive provocations of U.S. troops. Iran and Syria, they maintain a close strategic alliance, with Iran offering extensive support to the Syrian government, including logistical, technical, financial aid, training, and combat troops, driven by their aim to bolster the Assad regime and address post-Assad government concerns. Iran also supports Russia. Following repeated denials, Iranian authorities eventually admitted in November of 2022 that small numbers of drones had been delivered to Russia before the Ukraine conflict began. And despite denials from Iranian officials, Tehran has provided Russia with hundreds of suicide drones and sent trainers from the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps to the Russian-occupied Crimean Peninsula to instruct Russian soldiers in drone warfare. Now, the Russian-Iran alliance directly threatens the EU and the US, potentially prolonging the Ukrainian conflict, enhancing Iran's nuclear program, destabilizing the Middle East, and undermining Western influence in global institutions. About Russia's desires. Iran and Russia are the winners of a massive conflict in the Middle East. Iran continues its war by proxy against Israel, and Russia creates a gigantic distraction to deflect focus away from its direct military actions to reunite the former Soviet countries under Russia. And Russia gains a trade partner that is equally focused on destroying Western influence. Iran makes gains with its nuclear program with Russian materials, and supporting Russia's aggression in Ukraine has strained Iran's ties with Europe governments, significantly deteriorating the relationship since Iran aligned itself with Moscow in the conflict. And for Russia's part, the country would like nothing better than the world distracted by a more significant conflict than the one it created in Ukraine. Right now, you don't see much in the headlines about Russian missiles striking Ukraine because the news cycle, and thus the world's attention, is focused on what is occurring in Israel. And let's not take our eyes off the ball in the street magician three-cup ball trick. Russia is still marching forward with its announced plan of restoring the former Soviet Union. A recent leaked internal strategy document revealed that Vladimir Putin's ambitions to annex Belarus unofficially, similar to its approach in Ukraine but through different means. And the plan outlines a comprehensive strategy for Russification, military integration, and establishing pro-Russian institutions, reflecting Putin's imperial ambitions and intent to eliminate the independence of both Belarus and Ukraine. And it isn't likely he's keeping these plans a secret either. Putin is pretty open about it. And don't forget that the former Soviet Union also included Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania. You may have missed in the news cycle that there was an attack on the major pipeline between Estonia and Finland. NATO has pledged a resolute response if the damage to an undersea gas pipeline between Finland and Estonia is determined to be deliberate, as investigators have detected signs of an external mechanical force on the seabed. And while media speculation involves around the possibility of Russian sabotage, Finnish investigators are treating the incident as a case of aggravated vandalism, with the repairs of the pipeline expected to take at least 5 months. Now, if proven, the NATO Secretary General emphasized that any attack on the Baltic Connector pipeline would trigger a unified and determined NATO response. Finland's relationship with Russia has significantly deteriorated due to Finland's NATO membership and Russia's actions in Ukraine, leading Russia to view Finland as a hostile country. And Russia's negative coverage of Finland in its media and the closure of Finland's consulate in St. Petersburg indicate this growing hostility. And while Russia's focus remains on Ukraine, the threat of Russian intelligence and influence in Finland persists, with potential countermeasures due to Finland's NATO affiliation and deepening Western Russia confrontation. Now, Russia, NATO, the US, and Europe, they're all engaged in a dangerous game of brinkmanship that is edging the world closer and closer to an all-out world. And for now, the Middle East appears to be one more front that has long been a hotbed that has been sucked into this pressure cooker. And for now, it will act as a pressure valve of sorts, but the pressure is still building elsewhere. Whether that's Russia's private military group fomenting revolts across Central Africa, stoking conflicts by arming and supporting hostilities in the Middle East, or cozying up to Iran over shared contempt for the West, Russia is working from its own geopolitical chess strategy with a particular endgame in mind. Giveaway. For this week's giveaway, we're going to give away a water drop gravity water filtration system. To be eligible for a chance to win, all you have to do is just post a comment below and click the like button. And in the future video, I'll use the tool to draw a winner from the comments on this video randomly. I'm not going to reach out to you unless your name appears on the screen next week, and you must have your email address on the About tab of your YouTube profile. Now, the subscriber Cameron Fagel is the winner of the last video's giveaway of the Baofeng radios, and I'll reach out to you shortly to get that sent to you. What does this mean to you? I think it's essential for us in the preparedness community not to run down the doomsday and apocalypse road, but to keep our heads about us. There's enough of that panic now stuff out there stoked by other outlets, especially on this platform. And if you want that kind of cortisone stress spike, well, you can go out there and find it. I prefer to stay focused on the ball here and really understand what's happening behind the curtain and what that will mean to me in the long term. I know it may seem a little off the path right now of how I cover the news in these videos, but I feel like this is a critical time to discuss the intentional disinformation campaigns that are working in full force. Now, these periods of turmoil are frequently accompanied by misinformation campaigns, often backed by state actors, which aim to sow confusion and elicit strong emotional responses like panic and anger. And they're made more effective by algorithms that feed you information designed to provoke reactions. This channel, my goal here is to really keep you informed enough to discern the real orchestrators behind these conflicts and evaluate information impartially. We want you to be informed to the point where you can read between the lines and see the major players pulling the strings behind these conflicts. But still, we also want you to make cautious evaluations of the information as unbiasedly as possible. Always feel free to fact check me. The simple litmus test is probably that if any article or comment online is firing up emotions in you, it may be intentionally designed to do that. Are you seeing what you want to see, or are you soberly evaluating the facts? Be wary of ascribing convenient blame when these conflicts run very deep and the players are not on the surface as they appear. Now, if you find yourself getting sucked into it all or worried about it all and the global ramifications it could have, my simple advice is to focus on what you can control. I say this all the time on the channel. If the conflict in the Middle East worsens or blows up into something of epic proportions, are you prepared against the oil supply threat, which will drive the cost at the pump and dramatically increase the cost of everything else from manufacturing to food production? If a new front opens up in this global war in Syria or Finland, are you prepared enough to survive through a world war when your country starts rationing and focusing its war efforts overseas? Now, each passing day seems to bring us another shocking event, more so than the day before. My point on this channel is always the same. What these things in the news should mean to you is that the time to prepare for even greater global uncertainty is now. There are major players out there right now whose end goal is to sow division, dissent, and create chaos. They want you divided and angry so you can't act intentionally and together. They want you to get sucked into the dizzying vortex. And the way to stay out of that is to focus on what you can control. You can position your food, your water, your energy, and your medical preps to last you 3 weeks, 3 months, or more. And when you do that, you take a little bit of control back from them. You turn your shocking events into smaller hurdles in your life to overcome. You leverage stability in your life, even as the world becomes more unstable. And for preppers, action is paramount. Start by conducting a thorough assessment of your immediate needs and vulnerabilities. Ensure that you have an ample supply of non-perishable food, clean water, and essential medical supplies. Establish an energy plan, including alternative power sources like solar panels or generators. You need to create a communication plan to stay in touch with loved ones and like-minded individuals. You need to invest in home security measures to protect your family and resources. And you need to develop practical skills such as first aid, self-defense, and basic survival skills. Regularly view and update your emergency plans, ensuring everyone in your households understands their roles. And by taking these tangible steps, you not only enhance your preparedness, but also empower yourself to navigate uncertain times with confidence. If that means just tuning out the endless news cycles to focus on what you can control, then do that. The news, it's going to stay there when you return. The algorithm is always ready to feed you the same stream of bad news it provided to you before. And far better will it be for you to focus on what you can control in your immediate surroundings and world. And I can assure you that there will be more shocking news in the future. The only thing that I'm certain about is that the world is going to become more divided and more chaotic with every passing day. So take back your calm world by preparing and bring a little peace back to your life. So while I will still be focusing the channel more directly on tangible things that you can do now to prepare your life, to endure disasters and the world's chaos, I do recognize the value of these news pieces from time to time to really let us zoom out and see the bigger picture. There's been several comments in some of my videos recently on the Israeli situation indicating that they were waiting to hear my take on what was happening. And I appreciate that vote of confidence and what I hope is unvarnished reporting on this channel. My opinion is that these things, like what's happening in Israel, they're not as transparent and clear as others would like you to believe. My take is to try and see the big picture, but stay focused on what I can control, which is my preps. A deadly game of brinkmanship and conflict is playing out amongst nations, and many people, they're going to tragically be caught up in that conflict. And if you can avoid being one of them, you will still need to prepare to endure the fallout of the damage created by these global upheavals. Now, to some extent, the power to do that is in your hands and is more powerful than any bad leader from any bellicose nation. Look, in these videos, it's always challenging when I sit down to write out what I want to say, to create an outline. And given it just feels like another moment that we're seeing a ramp up kind of occurring in our lives in the world. And this is why I decided this week to bring back our news segment. I'm not opposed to bringing it back on a consistent basis. But for me, I feel the more important time and energy spent by myself and my team to give you practical how-to information for me right now is my primary focus, and it will continue to be so. But we are open to introducing these periodically as the needs arise. If you want to do something today after you watch this video, I would encourage you to watch our 3-week food supply video that I'll post up here on the side of the screen. You can click on it, and it has some great information to get you started on building a practical food supply to create a buffer so that you're prepared. As always, stay safe out there.